Every empire that ever tried to erase China ended up becoming Chinese. It's one of the most unsettling paradoxes in human history. Imagine a swarm of locusts descending upon a lush garden, only to find that as they devour the plants, they themselves begin to transform into the very leaves they intended to destroy. This is the story of a civilization that survives not by defeating its enemies, but by digesting them. For over 2 millennia, the Great Wall stood as a silent witness to a repetitive cycle. To the north, the vast Eurasian steppe bred the most formidable warriors the world had ever seen. These were people born on horseback, masters of the bow, who could strike a bird from the sky at full gallop. To them, China was not a country. It was a giant, sedentary treasure chest waiting to be plundered. For centuries, the relationship was simple. The nomads raided, and China paid for peace. It was a messy, expensive, and often bloody arrangement. But every so often, the cycle would break. A nomadic leader would look at the riches of the Silk Road, the massive cities of Chang'an or Beijing, and the millions of people, and think, why should I just take the gold when I can take the throne? And they did. The Mongols did it in the 13th century. The Manchus did it in the 17th. They shattered the walls, slaughtered the defenders, and sat on the dragon throne. But then, something strange happened. The fierce Mongol warrior, who once slept in a felt tent and despised settled life, started wearing silk robes. He began hiring Chinese tutors for his sons. He started performing ancient rituals to ancestors he didn't even share. Within just a couple of generations, the conqueror was gone. In his place sat a Chinese emperor with a slightly different lineage, but running the exact same cultural operating system. So why did Rome fall and stay fallen, leaving behind only ruins and Romance languages? Why did the great empires of Mesopotamia get swallowed by the sands of time, replaced by entirely new civilizations? China is the outlier. It's like a powerful river that has been dammed, diverted, and even poisoned. Yet it always finds its way back to the same ancient channel. To understand this, we have to look past the battles. We have to examine the invisible structures of its bureaucracy, the source code of its philosophy, and a definition of identity so powerful, it almost makes the concept of foreigner irrelevant. In this deep dive, we are going to analyze the 3 layers of this incredible digestive system. We'll see how the world's most brutal military forces were neutralized, not by swords, but by tax codes and tea ceremonies. We will explore how invaders like the Manchus started performing Chineseness even better than the Chinese themselves, simply to hold on to power. And finally, we will ask the most important question for our modern age. Is this ancient digestive tract still functioning today? Is the modern Chinese state still using the same 2,000-year-old software to integrate the world into its orbit? Welcome to Macro History. Join me as we descend into the depths of this cultural phenomenon. Subscribe, and let's get started. The nomadic conqueror enters China with a simple goal: total extraction. But the moment the dust of battle settles, he hits a wall far more formidable than the one made of stone. He hits the wall of math. When the Mongols under Kublai Khan officially established the Yuan Dynasty, they weren't just ruling a territory. They were inheriting a biological machine of nearly 100 million people. On the steppe, a leader manages a tribe through personal loyalty and the promise of plunder. But you cannot manage 100 million farmers with a horse and a bow. To keep the empire from starving, you need grain stores. To fund the military, you need taxes. To settle a land dispute in a province 1,000 miles away, you need a legal code. The nomads looked around and realized they had no software for this. Their culture was built for mobility, not for the massive, grinding stillness of a sedentary empire. So, they did the only thing they could do to survive. They opened the drawer and pulled out the old Chinese manuals. This is the first stage of digestion, assimilation through administration. The conqueror quickly realizes that if he kills all the bureaucrats, the taxes stop. If he burns all the records, the economy collapses. Therefore, he must keep the literati, the scholar officials, in their posts. But these scholars aren't just employees, they are the carriers of a cultural virus. They refuse to work unless the emperor acts like an emperor. They demand rituals. They demand the mandate of heaven. Slowly, the conqueror begins to perform. He starts to speak the language of the governed because it is the only language that the machine understands. Think of it like a group of hackers taking over a high-tech skyscraper. They broke the door down with axes, but to turn on the lights to run the elevators. And to keep the air conditioning going, they have to sit down at the computers and learn the existing operating system. And the more time they spend in that system, the more they begin to think like the people who programmed it. This leads us to the heart of the machine, Confucianism. For 2,000 years, Confucianism has functioned as the source code of Chinese society. It is not just a philosophy. It is a rigid, fractal-like hierarchy that defines every relationship, father to son, husband to wife, and most importantly, emperor to subject. When the Manchus, a Tungusic people from the northeast, invaded in 1644, they were even smarter than the Mongols. They didn't fight the source code, they mastered it. They realized that by becoming the most Confucian rulers in history, the third stage of digestion is the most terrifying for any conqueror, the sheer weight of existence. In most historical contexts, identity is a matter of blood. You are Roman because your father was Roman. You are a Viking because you share the lineage of the North. But the underground river of China operates on a logic that is almost unique in world history. Being Chinese or belonging to Zhonghua was traditionally defined more by participation in a civilization than by ancestry. If you followed the Confucian ethics, if you used the logographic writing system, if you respected the imperial hierarchy and performed the proper rituals for your ancestors, you were in. The door was never locked. This meant that the conquerors didn't just walk into a territory, they walked into a civilizational state that was designed to absorb them. Consider the numbers. In 1644, when the Manchus established the Qing Dynasty, they numbered roughly 1 to 2 million people. They were surrounded by an ocean of 150 million Han Chinese. Imagine a single drop of red ink falling into a vast blue lake. For a moment, you see the red swirl. It looks distinct. It looks like it might change the color of the water. But as the currents move, as the days pass, the red is pulled apart. Every interaction, hiring a local nurse for your child, buying grain from a local merchant, discussing philosophy with a local scholar, is a microscopic act of dilution. The Manchus were so afraid of this that they tried to build dams to stop the flow. They passed laws forbidding Manchu and Han intermarriage. They forced Han men to wear the queue, the shaved forehead, and long braid as a symbol of submission. They tried to keep their homeland in Manchuria a pure sanctuary where Han migration was banned. But the river laughed at their dams. The Manchus needed the Han to run the economy. They needed Han generals to fight their wars. They needed Han taxpayers to build their palaces. By the end of the 19th century, the dams had burst. The Manchu language was dying, spoken only by a handful of elderly aristocrats in the palace. The fierce warriors who once survived on dried meat and mare's milk were now connoisseurs of bird's nest soup and Peking opera. They had maintained their political power, but they had lost their soul to the current. This leads us to a profound realization. China's greatest weapon was never the crossbow or the gunpowder. It was the standardization of the mind. When the first emperor, Qin Shuang, unified China, he didn't just unify the land, he unified the script. Even if people in the south and north spoke languages that were mutually unintelligible, they wrote the same characters, they shared the same operating system. This created a cultural gravity so strong that it pulled everything inward. In the West, when an empire falls, it fragments into different languages and different identities: French, Spanish, Italian, German. In China, when the center collapses, the fragments don't try to become something new, they try to become the next China. Every rebel leader, every nomadic usurper was aiming for the same prize: to be the one true son of heaven, presiding over the same ancient system. The conquerors thought they were seizing a crown. They didn't realize they were being recruited into a 2,000-year-old bureaucracy that would outlive their tribes, their languages, and their very names. Have you ever wondered why China seems to have an unbroken, continuous history spanning thousands of years? It's a common point of pride, but when you look closer, a hidden tragedy reveals itself. This isn't a story of one dynasty simply passing the torch to the next. It's a story of conquest, assimilation, and cultural absorption. Let's start with a simple question. Who are the Chinese people today? We often think of the Han Chinese, but the reality is much more complex. Throughout its long history, the land we now call China has been a battleground for countless ethnic groups: the Xiongnu, the Shanboi, the Jurchens, the Mongols, the Manchus. The Manchus, these aren't just footnotes in a history book. They were powerful forces that established their own dynasties, like the Northern Wei, the Jin, the Yuan, and the Qing. Each of these conquests was a monumental tragedy for the people living there at the time. Imagine foreign invaders taking over your land, imposing their rule, and changing your way of life. The Han people, who established the early foundational dynasties, like the Han and Tang, were repeatedly conquered. Yet something strange happened each time. The conquerors, despite their military might, found themselves slowly being absorbed by the very culture they had defeated. This is the great paradox of Chinese history. The conquerors adopted the Chinese language, the Confucian system of governance, the bureaucracy, and even the customs. The Xianbai emperors of the Northern Wei, for instance, actively promoted Sinicization, even forcing their own people to adopt Chinese surnames. The Manchus, who ruled the final imperial dynasty, the Qing, spent so much time immersed in Chinese culture that they nearly lost their own language and identity by the end of their reign. So, this unbroken history is not one of a single continuous entity. It's more like a river that has had many other rivers, some of them massive, flowing into it. The original river's water is still there, but it's been mixed with and changed by everything that has joined it. The Chinese culture we see today is a fusion, a synthesis of countless different peoples, with the Han culture acting as a powerful, assimilating core. The tragedy lies in the immense human cost of this process. Every conquest, every forced assimilation involved unimaginable suffering and loss. Dynasties rose and fell, not in peaceful transitions, but through brutal wars. But the strange resilience of the culture meant that even the victors eventually became part of the civilization they had subdued. So, the next time you hear about China's 5,000 years of continuous history, remember, it's not a simple, linear story. It's a complex, often brutal, and deeply fascinating saga of conquest, tragedy, and relentless assimilation. It's a history that didn't just survive, it consumed and integrated its conquerors, creating the unique and multifaceted civilization we see today. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective on history interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. See you next time.